Welcome to Pause for the Truth.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to a special broadcast of Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. Tonight is going to be a special night. It's one that we've not done before, so I'm super excited. We've never done a Sunday night show, but we know that we're in an important season, and therefore we wanted to make sure that we had our important guest on tonight. And of course, he is extremely busy now as he campaigns to be our next United States Senator here in the state of Florida. Before bringing Mr. Campbell on, I'd like to, of course, bring in my co host, Dr. Rogers Kane. How are you doing this Sunday evening, Dr. Kane? It's
Uh,
special, isn't it?
yeah, it's a special evening. I'm not used to this. I had so many things I got going on. I'm juggling so many hats today, but this is one of those that I am really pleased to be here to juggle because I like alternatives. I like variety. I like the ability to be able to see something different, to do something different. How do they say is the definition of being a moron and keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm looking not to fall into that trap this election season for sure.
Well, we're excited again, and just hope that our normal listeners who are used to tuning in on Tuesday night are tuning in with us tonight. But we obviously make the broadcast available after tonight, so folks who are not able to join in tonight will be able to tune in afterwards. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we are super excited to have Mr. Stanley Campbell for U.S. Senate, as you see on his screen. And I'm going to start by saying, Mr. Campbell, how are you this evening?
Well, thank you, and thank you guys for having me. I am doing absolutely great, Ms. Jocelyn and Dr. Herbst. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm ready to get going because I think we've got so much to talk about, and hopefully we'll help somebody along the way, and maybe I'll get a vote or two out of this.
Yeah, that is the ultimate goal, right? For folks to get to know you a little better. So let's start out by saying, tell us a little bit about your background and why you decided to run for the U.S. Senate.
Well, first of all, I'm from Miami, Florida, born and raised. When I got introduced last night, and the guy says, "Yeah, he's from the hood," and I say, "No, I'm not from the hood. The project was 4 blocks away. I'm hood adjacent." But I can tell you, I was born and raised in Miami. I went to junior high school. I was the first class in the public school system that had just built a new school in our neighborhood called Charles Drew. And then the next year, I was actually bused to Miami Beach for junior high school, and then I finished high school at Miami Beach. I left there and took that 2.6 grade point average up to Florida A&M University, where I studied physics and mathematics, and go Rattlers. And and in that, I actually worked as a geophysicist with Amoco Production after leaving there. But while I was there, I actually worked on the data reduction and air analysis package for the Voyager 2. And then 5 years after leaving college, it actually launched, and it's still been flying ever since. Um, so that's kind of the younger days. Today, I couldn't get into Florida A&M with that 2.6 grade point average. So I don't sit on their board. I sit on the board of Indian River State College, which has a 2 year degree that I would have to go to get that done. I left for MU and then I took a test because growing up in Florida, you get the idea of of um, of NASA and all of us who go past being a lawyer or being a doctor or being a fireman or a policeman. I wanted to be an astronaut. So I took that test and I passed it and I became a United States Navy pilot. And they sent me right back to Florida, to Pensacola, Florida, where I took flight school and I eventually got my wings in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Very
Wow, what a
good.
background.
Mr.
Yeah.
Cameron, but what year was that you went and took that test? I give you the reason why in a second. What
I, I,
year
I
of the
think that
pilot?
was probably, I took the test probably about 75.
Yeah, well, in 73, I remember taking the same test. They said I qualify for everything, anything in the Air Force. And I'm going like, okay, I want to be a pilot, except a pilot.
Right.
It shows how things change in a matter of 2 years.
I can tell you, myself and my friends used to say they don't want you flying that airplane.
No.
So you really, I'll say it was not about you. You can
Oh, no.
still fly that airplane.
Listen, when the guy chased me out the door because my scores were so high, as he said, when he chased me out the door trying to recruit me, and then all of a sudden I couldn't make it as pilot, I said, well, forget about it. If I can't be a pilot, I'm not going in there. So,
well, I did that in college, and every time I would go over to a Navy ROTC, they would say, "Oh, you're going to nuclear power," and I'm like, "No, I don't want to sit on no submarine." And I leave, And when you're a physics major, you don't have to worry about scholarship. So I go back over there the next year, and they say nuclear power, and I leave again. So I did the officer and the gentleman route,
I truly admire you because physics is that one subject matter I got about this close to flunking because it was so difficult for me. Okay. So for you to go in there and ace of physics to do what you're doing, I salute you, my brother. And I know you can do what Rick Scott thinks he's doing. And I know you can do it better.
Well, Rick Scott has done a lot. He's done a lot for the state. Like he didn't take $2 billion for a rail system. And now we don't have a rail system at the level that we would have had because they were going to build the high-speed rail between Tampa and Orlando. You could work any place. So he turned down that $2 billion and the 11,000 jobs to build that, to construct that. I'm going to go in and ask for $4.4 billion. We're going to build that rail system from Tampa to Orlando, and then we're going to go from Orlando to Jacksonville. And the reason being that I'm going to get it is because it's necessary. We have the biggest state in the world. We're a donor state. We're the third largest economy in the United States. And we have not taken through these two governors the monies that are due to us, and I'm going to ask for that. And if the governors don't basically join me in it, whoever that governor is, then we'll just do it on the federal side, because that's the thing my wife has figured out. My wife is in the Biden-Harris administration. She's the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. And what she's done is, she is basically funds directly to the federally funded health facilities. Well, we can do that. We can do that with CSX or any of the other train route folks. We just need a partner. And if the state doesn't want to be a partner, then the federal government has every right to do it because we need it.
So in terms of your policy and issues, what are your top three priorities if elected? Or I'll change that and say when elected to the Senate.
Yeah, I'm glad you changed it. It just kept me from having to change it. But I can tell you, when I'm elected, there are a number of things that we've got to do. And I'll give you a few. We have the highest insurance rates in the country.
Yes.
By far. And no matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it because we get hurricanes. We're the target of the hurricanes. We're going to get 5 hurricanes this year. We've already had 2. One of them hit Texas, and the other one hit us last week. And so that is just going to do nothing but raise our insurance rates even higher. The issue is with the one that hit Texas, hit Texas, but the other one could easily have hit Alabama, Mississippi, or Louisiana, or Texas, in fact. And at the same time we were getting hit by a hurricane, they had fires in California, and we obviously a couple of weeks ago we had floods in Iowa. That means we've got a shared responsibility. If the federal government was the first payer, even though they're going to put something in, FEMA comes through and Healthy Human Services come through, but they're generally the last player or the third responder. If they are the first payer, then what that would do, and we do that across the nation, that would actually lower our insurance rates by 30%, California by 30%, Texas by about 29%, Mississippi about 22%. But we would all see a lowering rate because we would have a shared responsibility. I'm going to put that bill in because I understand what the National Critical Infrastructure Protection Program is. That's what it'll go into putting insurance into the National Critical Infrastructure Protection. Second thing on healthcare, we have a governor, and I'm running against a senator. When he was governor, he actually put 880,000 people off of the Medicare and Medicaid rolls. He did not, and he did that by not extending Medicaid, the program for Medicaid, and that Florida's one of 11 states that don't have the Medicaid expansion. I'm going to change that, but at the end of the day, what he did in putting those 880,000 people off of healthcare, he set up that the next governor did the same thing and added another 350,000. So no matter who takes the office next, they'll have 1.2 million people who show up at the emergency room on the first day. So what I'm going to do to solve that is I'm going to ask for an extension of the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is a commercial insurance, but the federal government will actually pay for individuals down to the individual having zero payments. And then that's how we're catching them now, because my wife is there, and that doesn't mean a thing, but that's what we're going to do. And the other part of the extension is that we take from head to toe. We treat you from head to toe. And that's going to be one of those that are critical. Now, the woman's right to choose is already on the ballot. We're going to change that, and they're going to actually do some things to try to move us off of that. And we already see the signs that this bulletproof Republican House and Senate that we have in the state. But I can tell you, at the federal level, even with the Republicans and Democrats kind of teasing around Roe versus Wade, I am very clear. Roe versus Wade worked for my mother, it worked for my cousins, it worked for every one of us. We had law in place called Roe versus Wade. I am a Roe versus Wade guy. I expect that we will do the things to put Roe versus Wade into the system as a federal response, and we will get past the noise of the
Ouch.
Uh-oh, we lost him.
Yeah, I see. We lost him for a second. He may be right back on. I was listening to what he had to say.
Yeah, Dr. Kane, while we're waiting for him to log back on, can I get you real quick to tell us a little about COVID-19? Should we be concerned about it again yet, or are we okay with, should people still, I wear my mask. How about I just say that? And I know I'm often in the minority with that. Should people still wear in crowded places if no other place?
Well, I'm going to be quick and dirty on this one because since we're waiting for him to come back, I want to be able to transition right into him.
Right.
The bottom line is this. We're coming up on the flu season. The flu shots are available. Flu season sometimes, has been somewhat representative of COVID season as well as of late. So sometimes when we see a rise in flu, we see a rise in COVID. That was a chance. That was one time where we saw a rise in RSV at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I am beginning to see some increased some ticking up of my COVID numbers over the past 2-3 weeks for sure. I've been seeing quite a few cases of COVID, and with this whole new virus that we have, a strand of virus or strain of this virus that we have coming on board. Yeah, we have some upper respiratory symptoms, runny nose, sore throat, nasal drip. We're seeing that. And what I want to make sure people got to remember, COVID still can kill, even though it doesn't seem to be as bad as that initial virus that we saw that was that took out 1 million lives or more here in the U.S. It does still kill for those, especially those who are immunocompromised, meaning their immune system is somewhat challenged. So we have to just try to make sure we protect ourselves and our loved ones. So wearing a mask is still a way to prevent you from catching it, and also to prevent from you spreading it on to your loved ones. And with that, we're going to get back to Mr. Campbell.
And it's so important. I'm thinking about, I want to just to kind of loop Mr. Campbell back in. When you were talking about Medicaid expansion not happening in Florida, I remember that. And I remember folks who were not able to get medical care and unfortunately use the emergency room as their primary provider. And that's pretty awful, Mr. Campbell. And welcome back.
During COVID.
Well, I can tell you, it's awful that your first time at the doctor's that we got to be at the emergency room, and it's also very expensive. See, the thing is, when you're now got an expense issue associated with the emergency room, you spend an hour in the emergency room, and that's $4,000. Well, you could have gone a whole year with going to the doctor and just doing the Affordable Care Act plan stuff for that same $4,000. It is actually crazy. But, when they look at you as a number and not as a person, that becomes the issue. And they look at 1.2 million of us in the state of Florida as numbers, and it's just a number. And in fact, it's not even a number that's a legitimate number, because if they just sign on the extension, most of that money comes back, because Florida's a donor state. We're just giving the money away for other states to benefit on. So it's just a political nightmare.
We're
about to wake people up.
I think what people don't realize is that when that money comes back, as you're saying, that it helps ease the burdens on Florida taxpayers, because it's spread across the federal dollars that you're actually bringing in. The other thing is, you'd be lucky if you only spend an hour in the emergency room. Right. You're looking 6 to 12 hours. You still see that same 4,000 or more bucks that you're talking about, but the number of hours there, that could have been hours that are more productive somewhere else. That could have been hours you are less exposed to other illnesses that are coming in to those emergency rooms. Because you got to remember, emergency room for sick people, and they bring in diseases, and so you don't really want to be there if you can help it at all.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So let's get back to your. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, getting back to your policies, you mentioned transportation in terms of what you would do, transportation, and then the Affordable Care Act. What else will be your focus when you are elected?
So I talked a little bit about I was going on and on. Believe me, I had 5 of them already teed up. But I mentioned a woman's rights to choose. I'm going to be very supportive of us doing Roe versus Wade, putting that back in place. And I have 5 medical doctors on staff, including my chief medical officer is an OBGYN oncologist. And so she sees people both as women, but she sees them at end of life as well, because she's also a cancer doctor. And what she's taught us is that there are things that we can do in women's health that are very productive. And we've been working on that for a while. This year, we wound up after 8 years, we wound up getting persistent monitoring as one of those things that is now on the books, where a doctor can actually write a prescription for a monitor. So I'll give you the example. We had in Central Florida, we had a woman who was in the last Olympics, not this one, and she won on the 4 by 200. She actually won a gold medal. Very proud. So this is a woman who is the top of her health, the best health care that can be provided in the entire state of Florida, and she died. She died of preeclampsia and eclampsia. Her event could have been totally avoided with just an Apple Watch or a Samsung watch that noticed her that her blood pressure was not being maintained properly. In the same race, the exact same race, the woman who went across the finish line was pregnant and had preeclampsia at her doctor's office, and they treated her there, took her to the hospital. She had a perfectly born baby, and she's since had another child. So just something that simple, where Black women are 800 times more likely to suffer from preeclampsia or eclampsia, or the maternal mortality is that much higher, and Hispanic women 6 times more likely as compared to their white counterpart. These are things that are just about a cure, because just that writing that prescription will stop about 85% of the issues that result in death. And then we talked about veterans. We have the best healthcare system in the state of Florida, best healthcare system of all the nation. But if you got to wait 60 to 90 days, someone upwards of 120 days to get an appointment, to get in to see a doctor, then you might as well not have it. And we in the United States, we have about 25 people who commit suicide every day. These people are coming back having fought many versions of wars, and they're not the same. They may look the same. In some cases, they may even act the same. They are not the same. We have to get them help. And so the issues associated with veterans, I have a 7-point plan. I call it the Veterans Bill of Rights. And one of the things that it says is you will be able to get to a doctor within 2 weeks. If they can't see you in the VA, you can actually go to any other doctor who would take Medicare or Medicaid. That will cost us $0, because the VA bills at the billing rate of Medicare and Medicaid, which is the same, in most cases, the same rate. But the Medicare rate is the same across the nation. And if a veteran can go into any doctor's office who would accept Medicare and actually get that rate, then it's a net zero cost. Now, people say, well, you're trying to shut down the VA healthcare system. No, I'm not. What I'm trying to do is right size the VA medical center, because it makes no sense to have people who are sick at home, many in pain, and that pain could actually also be mental health as a pain, that are suffering, and they got to wait on somebody to get ready to see them in the doctor's office. Well, there's a lot of doctor's offices that are available, and that's one that would not cost us a dime, because the billing rate is the same. And then if we need to build more veterans hospitals, we can do that, because now we'll know exactly how many we need, and we know where we need them as well. So those are just a few of the things that I got. I can tell you I have a few more, because I didn't just think of this to run for this election. I've been thinking about the issues of the state of Florida and of the nation for a while.
Let me
If you're
backtrack
just tuning in, hold on 1 second, Dr. Kane. If you're just tuning in, joining us this evening is Stanley Campbell, candidate for U.S. Senate here in the state of Florida. If you have a question for Mr. Campbell, please dial in 888-669-1280. Hopefully I have that number correct, but our technology guy who's behind the scene, he'll flash it up if I have it wrong. Again, 888-669-1280. Ask Mr. Campbell a question, because he wants your vote. That's why he's here. You may not have known him before now, and now you have an opportunity to learn what his policy and issues are of importance to him that he'd like to bring to the state of Florida. Go ahead, Dr. Kane.
I was just going to let him two things. One is as far as the veterans are concerned, I can really appreciate what he's saying. Just so happens, our office, we work pretty well with the local VA, but that's not all across the country. We can supplement the care, and that's what you're speaking to, Mr. Campbell. Let's supplement the care the VA provides because they don't have enough providers. When they can build up on that system and have enough providers, then fine, they can stick with the VA system purely. But that's only when we're able to provide the resources that those caregivers in the VA system need to have available to take care of our much appreciated, at least in statement, veterans. And in action, it just doesn't seem that our former presidents or some of the members in Congress seem to really appreciate those veterans for what they do. Because, my wife always said, you can always tell me that you love me, but you got to show me. And so when they sit back and start telling people how much they appreciate them, you need to show them how much you appreciate them by providing at least the care when they come back and they're suffering from the post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD that war brings. And I don't care how strong a man you are or how strong a woman you are, you never got prepared growing up for looking at blown up bodies and looking at, your friend 1 minute you're talking to them, the next minute they are gone, and so on and so on, and also the issues that plague our veterans' families. When that veteran is not here, we need to make sure we can take care of the wives and the children for those who serve us. And our Congress, I just hate to say it, our legislature so far has not done that. And somebody needs to step up to the plate as what you're describing, that you're intent on doing. They need to step up and step their game up in terms of making sure that these veterans are taken care of.
I can tell you, when I talk to veterans, I'm a veteran myself, and I can tell you the thank you for your service is just not enough. We had Rick Scott actually stop veteran. He didn't do it himself. Tommy Tuberville stopped military promotions. They politicized the military, and I tied that right around Rick Scott's neck because what wound up happening, he never said one word against them. And these are families that when that soldier, sailor, airman, marine, or guardsman goes to war, their family goes to war with them. And so another part of that bill, that Veterans Bill of Rights that I talked about, is that we will actually pay for every veteran's child or the veteran's spouse to go to a state college to get their degree at no cost. Because it's not just enough that they can actually go to college when the veteran is killed in action. It is the fact that we have people at the lowest rank, E1 all the way to 05, 06, that some of them can afford to send their children to school and others don't. But I can tell you, when you're moving every 3 years, that child's education is interrupted. When you're now having to deploy, that child's education is interrupted. And we wind up seeing the death part of that because that debt gets to show up in what happens to those kids. And I can tell you, a nation that truly is grateful for the small percentage of people who actually do join this military because it's an all-volunteer force, they should actually be pleased to send them to a state school of their choice. And that's something that's a part of that bill. And I won't go through all the pieces, but there's some of them that are just so core to me because I could afford to send my children to school. Most of these military people can't. So we need to solve that.
We definitely feel, at least I do, definitely feel that our military, our veterans, and the people that serve in the military are not getting their fair share of what this country owes them in terms of the services that they provided to this country. Now, I don't care what anybody says, you have got to do better by our veterans, and then I'm going to throw in another little monkey wrench, our teachers. That's a whole nother, that's a subject you hadn't touched yet, but I'll let you grow.
I will talk about teachers as well. So here's a little simple fact that is somewhat troubling to me. Teachers in the state of Florida are paid 50th out of 50 states.
Hmm.
So if you include the District of Columbia, we're 50th out of 51 states. 50th.
That's ridiculous.
This is the third largest economy in the United States, and we are we're if we were a country, we would be somewhere like the 28th largest country in the world, and we pay our teachers 50th out of 50.
That means you're
is
worse than
absolutely
Mississippi.
crazy.
That means you're
Well,
worse
I
than
can
Mississippi.
That means we're way worse than Mississippi. Mississippi is somewhere in the middle. We're way worse than Mississippi.
Wow.
And we have an education system that should be the envy of the world. Our state school systems are great. But if you can't get in the system because they say we don't count for equity. Yes, we can be diverse. Yes, we don't have a problem with inclusion, but you can't get any equity to get into the school. Well, I can tell you, for me, when I went to college on a 2.8 grade point average, I had equity because I had to walk 30 minutes to get to a bus stop, ride a bus for an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes, and then I had to do the same thing coming back, where my counterparts on Miami Beach, they roll out of bed and they're in school in 30 minutes. That 3 hours or 3.5 hours gave me equity because I also had a job and I also did sports. And now they're saying that there's no equity there. You can't look at the child as the whole child and what they came to. And I wind up having 14 patents in artificial intelligence, including the controlling patent that every single one of those companies that you see on TV every day have to touch that patent. So therein lies a lot of things that we have to think about in our education system. But I can tell you, you cannot keep teachers here. You cannot get the best and brightest if you're going to pay them 50th out of 50. That just makes absolutely no sense.
They have families to take care of just like you and I do.
Exactly.
And they need to be able to provide for those families to be able to take care of your kids and educate your kids.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think I stand alone when I say that. I'm from the bottom as well. I'm not far as bottom as you are. I'm from Lauderdale, but I'm still from the bottom. And we know what happens in South Florida, what we need to do in South Florida to overcome these deficits in terms of education.
Well, the way they can pay them now is, and the way they will do it, is you have to put taxes in locally. I'm going to a federal office, and what I'm going to ask the Department of Education to do is make requirements that on the funds that are sent back to the states, that we say those funds have to stay with the kid. So just to give you an idea of what that does, we have not one of us live in a major county area that's not going to lose at least 2 schools. So just think about that. If you look at that 2025 plan, they want to demise the public school system. And so the way they do it is you say, okay, you get $8,000 and you can go to any school you want and take that $8,000 with you. And so what they come into our neighborhoods and they pull out the smartest kids. They'll get the best and brightest. And so when now you have these underperforming elementary schools and underperforming middle schools, and then that populates into the high school system. Well, if you change that and you say the funds will follow the child, when they fail that kid out of a program, a special school program, and that kid didn't make the muster to what they're doing, and that kid goes back to the school, what I'm going to do is at the federal level is require that money follows the kid back.
Yes.
Because what's happening now is when they go back, the kid that got the $8,000 who is in the public school system, his is now worth $6,000 because the 2 other kids came back from the private school system and they didn't bring the money with them. That in lies is going to cut, one, the departure out of the public school system, the only system that has a requirement for standards for the kids to graduate or move up in school, because The private schools don't have that same requirement. And it's also going to have us give a look at what is a child graduating at the 6th grade level, at the 8th grade level, at the 12th grade level. We should also have minimum standards for the country for that. And every other country has that. We don't.
I'm going to say this real
I don't want to.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah. We have in this state, we can't even teach Black history. And where I went to high school and junior high schools, both there were Jewish schools. Every single day I heard, if you don't remember your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And now we have a governor that says you cannot teach Black history because it'll affect other children. And I'm saying our regular history in some cases is brilliant, it's great, in other cases is evil. And we have to be able to teach the whole of our history because that's how you know who we are.
I was gonna say real quick, I am a perfect example. I have a perfect example of what you mentioned as far as the two schools, the two different types of educational system is what I call it. Here, those charter schools and the public schools. I got a public school. I can pick up a rock and go to my left and throw it through that front door, okay? And then I got a charter school built right down the street. I can pick up a rock and throw it through their front door, and they've taken children away from this public school that they're getting ready to shut down to take it over to the charter school that they just built within the past 2 years. And it's just ridiculous in terms of the discrimination that is occurring as far as our kids' education are concerned when it comes to charter and public school. But I digress.
And by the way, there's no better. When I went to Miami Beach and I got all that I got, my two older brothers went to Miami Northwestern. My oldest brother got a PhD in psychology. My second oldest brother got the exact same degree that I got from Florida A&M. And he was the plant manager for the largest chemical plant in the country, the Monsanto plant in Pensacola, Florida. I'm the third one, and my brother under me, who also went to the beach, who became a chef, and my youngest brother, who went to the beach, is Luther Campbell, Two Live Crew. So the issue is not the fact that it's the school; it is the fact that what are we putting into the child when they go to the school? And I can tell you, we have to have standards with you coming out of the school, because if you don't, my private school son and my two public school sons, my two older boys went to public school. My youngest son went to private school. There's no difference in the education because they had to come home. They had to get some element of education. And so it's not just the fact that we treat those kids, but we also have to treat the families because everybody home isn't the same. If grandma is raising the child, that child is going to learn a lot different than if mom is raising. And if mom doesn't have any education, don't send Algebra 2 home because they don't even have the skills to get them. So our education system, I wouldn't say it's hard broken. It is broken hard, though, because it is designed under that 2025 plan to basically demise our public school system and not have any accountability on the private side.
And it especially
I want to switch subjects. Thank you. I want to make sure we touch on different things because our audience obviously cares about and is passionate about different things. I would like to know, I was reading an article today, Mr. Campbell, as the Olympics closed out, and the article said that as far as Summer Olympics goes, there are going to be some cities because of climate change that are not going to be able to host the Summer Olympics because of heat. It's going to be too hot. So how do you propose to handle climate change and environmental protection?
So I mentioned earlier about insurance, our insurance rates, but the insurance rate is something that is transactional. That is something we have the highest rates because of climate. But the climate is very, very dangerous where we are right now. In the last 10 years, we have the highest temperatures ever recorded since they've had thermometers. And this year is the highest of those previous none.
Mhm.
The reason that we have this temperature is global warming. I don't care who says what. When you drive home and you
Mhm.
put your hand on the hood of that car, you feel the temperature. I did not say open the hood and put your hand on the block because it'll burn. The issue is now think about every car you pass, and they're putting out the same kind of temperatures. And then think about every car in the state, and they're putting out the same temperatures. And then think about every car in the nation, and they're putting out the same temperatures, and every car in the world. And that doesn't mean that we changed anything other than the temperature. We have not even accounted for what's coming out of the exhaust, which is killing our atmosphere. And this is the atmosphere that has the ability to block the sunlight so we don't get this hot. This is absolutely crazy. What we've got to do in Florida, and I have no idea why these two governors back to back want to fight the us coming off of fossil fuels.
Fuel.
We could easily have had rail system with the 80 with the $2 billion. We could easily have electronic refueling stations and not and then and the rail would actually take us from this 16 and 18 lane highways, 7 and 8 lane highways, because we have a rail going straight across the state. These are the kinds of things that we're in a critical situation. If you can't play outside, because that's what the Olympics is, it is doing a sport outside.
Yep.
And if we can't take the best athletes on the face of the earth and they can't play outside, what in the world has that done to our kids? So
If you,
we've got to be able to take the climate very serious, because I can tell you, as a person, my very first flight, I flew in the military. My first mission flight, after I got my wings, I'm in the squadron, I flew to Keflavik, Iceland. I'll never forget it. It was ice and snow, and I'm nervous, and I'm landing the airplane, and ice and snow. In 3 years, I now moved to co-pilot, I moved to plane commander, and I'm flying this very important mission. And for 3.5 years, I land in Keflavik, Iceland, snow and ice, and snow and ice and icebergs. I took my wife 5 years ago on our 30th anniversary. I took her around to some of the places I've been in. One of them was Keflavik, Iceland. We land, and it's all green. It's not no ice. And I say
Greenland,
in one generation, all the ice is gone. The icebergs are gone. They're melting as we speak. Therein lies a very big problem, because when it lands in Miami Beach or Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach or Jacksonville Beach or Tampa, Florida or Hillsborough County, all of them we flood almost on a dime. These are real serious situations. And if we don't make a change now, we will not. And I'm telling you, we're already on the backside of the power curve. We already have very serious things that we have to do. And when people talk about there's no global warming, they're just pushing a farce so that we can continue the fossil fuel glut. And I can tell you, it is not going to have us. But at the end of the day, this is what I said in the speech the other day. The earth is going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's going to keep rotating, and it's going to keep going around the sun, and the earth will be fine. We just won't be able to live on it. That's the problem.
they're so concerned about. Our, for lack of better description, our Republican counterparts are so concerned about jobs, jobs, jobs. Despite what those jobs may do as it relates to global warming, they have to remember the heat will kill you first. You can, you won't have a retirement to look forward to if you're dead from the heat. And as you can see, you can take an egg out there today and put it in a frying pan and it'll fry itself. At least up here today it did.
Outside, and that's every day. Believe me, I got a golf course. I'm sitting at a golf course, and we probably have maybe 30% of what would be out there if the temperature was under 100 degrees.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It is a
So,
safety issue for sure.
so the
It's life
economy,
saving.
yeah, the economy is obviously on a lot of folks' mind. How do you plan to address the current economic challenges facing our country?
Well, our country is well, first of all, let's say it is the richest country in the world. So we don't have an economic crisis per se. Our neighborhoods have the economic crisis. Well, when you can give $4.5 trillion to the rich and expect that that's going to come down to the rest of us, it makes no sense. It didn't make sense when Reagan did trickle
Nope.
down. It didn't make sense when Trump did it.
Nope.
What we've got to do is we've got to get the jobs. And those jobs have got to be relevant jobs, not just jobs for the sake of jobs. That means that we've got to bring manufacturing back. The president did, and the Stimulus Act, he did a very big thing. He got chip manufacturing in 3 places, and he's got development and technology in 3 places, and those big companies. But even that doesn't get down to our neighborhoods because there's no $8 billion or $12 billion sent to any black companies. And so what winds up happening is we've got to basically build our economy from the middle out, not from the top down. We've got to, and we can do that because we know the reason I got the endorsement of the AFL-CIO was because I understand how to do that. I am a small businessman, and I built out a company that has, I got the largest healthcare network in the country. I message into every point of sale pharmacy. And I built that because I tied to the biggest guys in the network. And in being tied to them, that has us into a situation where our fervorance is very valuable. Now, everybody can't do that because everybody can't do AI patents and that kind of stuff. But everybody can work who are able to work. But if you don't have a system where I can drop my child off at a school and that it doesn't cost me so much that it's more efficient for me to stay home, that is absolutely crazy. So multiple things have to happen for us to be able to get the full fruit of our jobs in the labor. One, we've got to get an education system that can take a child from 2 years old and all the way through high school graduation. That's going to get mom an ability to go to work. And that's going to get her with leaving her child someplace that she knows she can trust. The next thing we've got to do is get those jobs, and the jobs come with training. Because I can tell you, in the next 5 years, AI is going to change everything that everybody does on the entirety of the earth. In 5 years, that's compared to, if we look at the aviation transition, that was 100 years to get us to 787. In the next 5 years, there's not going to be anything the same. If you got a farm, it's going to be run by something in the satellite and nobody sitting in the seat of that tractor. And you can just go on and on. When you go home outside tonight, your car will come to you. You will not go to your car. These things are real. And if we don't prepare for them now, I say that to say, guess what? There's a very good streamline behind that. A nurse practitioner with an AI system on her electronic health record is almost like they got 1,000 doctors standing behind them. Because when they put in the information on that patient, it's like that 1,000 doctors just did the analysis and helped them get better health care and better services.
In seconds.
The devices,
In seconds. Compared
in
to
seconds.
those same 1,000 doctors, if you put them in a room talking about it, it's going to take hours, if not days.
Exactly. And so these are the kinds of things that we've got to be able to prepare for those jobs right now. If you look at China has almost as many people in college as we have in the United States. They got just short of 300 million people in college. Every single one of them take AI. No matter what their discipline is, they have to take AI. We've got to be able to do the same. Right now, we're leading in most of the areas in the world, but we won't have that forever. And I
I,
can tell you, we've got to do jobs programs that get people training, and more training. The
let me
labor unions do training.
let me
Go ahead. I'm
supplement
sorry.
that right quick, and that is, I tell my physicians, that they're concerned about AI taking their jobs. I said, no, a physician that uses AI will take your job.
Exactly.
So if you don't know
Exactly.
AI, that's what you're gonna lose, is your job to another
Exactly.
physician that does know, or nurse practitioner in some cases. So
So when it comes
Well,
to
we
working, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
I was going to say we have, I used it to stop Medicare and Medicaid fraud. So on the eligibility side, but I can tell you we have AI patents in diabetes, hypertension, congestive heart failure, COPD, um, asthma. When we do some rare diseases like Ehlers-Danlos or dysautonomia, but those patents on just diabetes, as an example, we do about 13 billion calculations in 1 second. In 1 second, and now think about how many doctors it would take to do that analysis. And every second, if you're persistently monitored with your diabetes meter, um, how often that is and how better your healthcare is. So you know exactly right now and you know what to do. This is what's going to happen to us, and we need to get on board now. We need to get our neighborhoods on board now, because none of this stuff is going to be the same. You will not be driven by a bus driver anymore, because it'll be better, cheaper, faster, and safer for that bus to be driven by the AI. Now, what does that mean? What happens to that truck driver or that bus driver? Well, they now can manage 3 trucks or 4 trucks, and those can be electronic trucks or hydrogen trucks. And we're not killing the atmosphere, and we're not taking them out of their mix to be able to do the same things without sleep and all the rest. We have to start thinking differently. And if you look at the House and the Senate right now, they do not have one person in the United States Senate that has any experience with AI, and not one person in the House of Representatives that have experience with AI. And it's going
until
to change the
until
world.
Stanley Campbell comes along, right?
There you go. Exactly correct.
So
Exactly
along that
correct.
line, then how do you plan to work across the aisle to achieve bipartisan support for your initiatives?
I can tell you, I've worked across the aisles for years. I raised my family in Washington. I worked in the intelligence space before moving to healthcare, and that when you're a military person, you might know the person's politics, but at the end of the day, you're there to get the job done. I've spent my life in Washington getting the job done. And so I know them and they know me. They know me from AI. I'm that AI guy. And they know me as being a person that is logic and legitimate. That gets you half the way. But the issue is I know how to get them on a shared responsibility. So when I did the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, Senator Cassidy, Dr. Cassidy, he had a shared responsibility because his office was in the hood. The other gentleman, senator, who I won't name because it was a family issue, his his family member passed away. So they had a common interest. We can actually move that. We have a common interest with veterans health. We can move that. We have a common interest in insurance,
Mhm.
because the people in Iowa who might vote Republican only had 35 flood plans, and all the homes that were destroyed for that. We have common interests, and as we work the common interests, it becomes easy to work toward an end game solution. And our common interest on the environment is there. Our common interest that we need more manufacturing back here. Our common interest is that we need to do more drug manufacturing here in the United States and not hand that off to China, because we know what happened when we had COVID. And by the way, in the next 24 months, we're going to almost double the amount of drugs that are available because we have that many drugs in clinical trials. We need to be ready. And I am that senator that is knowledgeable, that knows the systems, and that knows how to get the job done. That's what's missing right now. When we're growing up, 85% of the people who were elected had done some element of work or service. They had some element that got them the gravitas to be able to run, not just money. Now, all you need is a ChatGPT speech and money, and you can get elected. We've got to get past that, because now we have about 8.5% of the people who have some life experiences that are, or some element of public service. That is the wrong pattern, because now you get professional politicians who just talk and don't act. And that's where we're stuck right now. Too many people talking, not enough people acting.
So I was involved I was involved in the community health needs assessment here in Northeast Florida. And the needs of people in urban communities are different from people in rural communities. What strategies do you have in place to address the concerns of rural and urban communities?
Well, great question. I love that question. I can tell you, I've been working with farmers for years, and not on anything that I ever thought I would be doing in my life. I actually bid spectrum. So that's the thing like internet and other elements of the spectrum. Because if you own a TV station or whatever else, the rule was that you would have 20% of spectrum should have gone to Black, Hispanic, or rural farmers. And when I bid, they did no Black, no Hispanic, and no rural farmer. So the farmers and I, we protested. And we went all the way to the Supreme Court. And every administration, 3 administrations, fought against us, including a Democratic one, whom I won't name, and we lost. But I can tell you, the work that I did with those farmers, they knew that the next set of tractors would be automated. They knew that the distribution system would be AI-based. They knew that if they didn't get into the spectrum, that they would just be buying services from an AT&T or some other company, and the farm stretch would be done by those major farmers. They knew that. On the assessment, the community assessment that you did, guess what? Those rural farmers in those areas are going, in the state of Florida, going to lose 25 hospitals in the next 24 months. 2 years, 25 hospitals. That means that those people who work on the farm, who live on the farm, or the farmers themselves have to now drive and continue to drive further. That is not sustainable, because what winds up happening is we need health care, and we need it in the places that there are people. So for me, I'm going to try to stop that 25 hospital closures. Right now, that's a Department of Agriculture element. I'm going to try to shift that responsibility over to the Department of Health and Human Services. And if we can turn those hospitals into federally funded facilities and run by the Department of Health and Human Services, we should be able to get them federalized and even put federal employees in place. But that doesn't do enough. We've got to be able to make these rural areas communicative. So when I talked about the transportation rail going from Tampa to Orlando, you got to go through Polk County. You got to go through Lakeland. You got to go through Barstow. You got to go through those places where once that train is built, then the other parts on the other sides of the train, like affordable housing as an example, or the hospital systems that those people who work in Tampa or work in Orlando can actually serve, because they now have lived out there and they don't have to drive all that way. They don't have to be stuck in the traffic. And when it goes up to Jacksonville, it's the same thing. So we have a plan, and these are integrated plans, but you've got to have knowledge about what is in my transportation system. How is that going to affect what I do with rail affect the highway? What do I do with rail that's going to affect when we flying airplanes, in the transportation and transport systems and the logistics systems associated with that? How is the education system going to change by virtue of the fact that if I go from Jacksonville, now that I have that build, I go from Jacksonville to Pensacola, and just think of all the military in the top part of the state, Naval Air Station Pensacola, Naval Air Station Whiting Field, Tyndall, the Air Force Base in Panama City, the Navy bases and Marine Corps bases in Jacksonville. Therein lies a joint responsibility that we can now go that way. And then if I come down the backside of the state with the same rail system, with all of the airports, just think about how many airports between West Palm Beach and Miami alone that were former military airports, because we did all that training in World War II here, that can actually be brought into play. These are the things that will make Florida the absolute best place to live, best place to work, best place to recreate, and best place to have technology as our leader. And that's why it's so critically important that we get the right people in place, because that's what's going to change us. And I think I'm a part of that right people.
Don't forget
like
the best health care if that goes, if your plan goes forward, the best health care in the nation.
Oh, we're definitely going to have the best healthcare, because we're going to have the best research, the best development. We're going to bring stuff that used to be here, I would say here being Puerto Rico for the most part, or New Jersey and New York, and we're going to bring that to Florida, because at the end of the day, we couldn't get sugar water and salt water to put in your veins because China had a shortage in the middle of COVID. I mean, something as simple as sugar water and salt water. Now, it is much more complex to put that into the healthcare system, but it's not so complex that not one of us could do it ourselves. With the right technology and the right tools and the things that the federal government was able to give to Intel and Apple and companies like that. We can do that right here in the state of Florida. We just have to have the will, because the knowledge is not the barrier. It is the will.
I'm glad you mentioned your relationship and the work you've done with rural people, because oftentimes people will say, I gave so and so my vote. However, once they get into office, I never hear from them. So, what strategies do you have in place to stay connected, or how do you intend on staying connected with your constituents, ensure that their voices are heard in Washington?
I can tell you my plan there is why I'm going to win the primary, because I show up. Every single political person on my team said, you got to run an 8-region race. 8-region race. They basically said that because that's what everybody else has done, an 8-region race. For me, I'm going to do a full 67 county race, and I've already been to to Pensacola probably 6 or 7 times. And the reason that I go there is because it's clear. There are people there. I've been to Barstow 3 times in the last week. That's Polk County. Nobody goes to Polk County who is running for election. But Polk County, let me just give you an example. Polk County is a large county. You can take the state of Rhode Island, put it in the middle of Polk County, drive all the way around, and never touch the state of Rhode Island. That's how big Polk County is. They don't have the number of people, so people who get elected don't go there. What they do have, though, is those small and medium-sized farmers. What they do have is the perfect opportunity to grow. Where they sit right in the middle of that rail system that is going to go from Tampa to Orlando. it is important that we understand the value of every person in the state of Florida, the value of every region in the state of Florida, and how they look at things. When I go to Miami, if we're talking about gun violence, a 14 or 16-year-old with a 22 rifle is very different than a 14 or 16-year-old with a rifle that is on a farm and the dad says, hey, I need you to go out there and kill these pigs because these wild pigs are ruining his crops. They have a very different view of gun violence. My view is very simple. I have to make a law that is same for both of them. And the law is very simple. If you can't put it if you put it on a driver's license, it should be on your license to carry that gun, to operate that gun. You should have training to operate that gun, and that training should have been certified by somebody else. It's very simple. And it's consistent with 70% of the nation's population. And I don't think that's so difficult. But the key is just showing up, just going to the places, talking to the people, shaking their hand, letting them see that you're real, and listening to them. The first 3 months of my campaign, I called it the listening tour. If you look at that little red L in the Stanley name, that red is because I'm listening. And then once I listened, then I did the next 3 months of saying what I heard and how what was said to me affected me. But I know this state. I was born and raised here. I was educated here, and I was professionalized in the United States Navy here. I know the things that I know very well, and the things that I don't know very well, I know how to get to the answer. But the things that are important and critical to us in the state of Florida, I know those things, and I'm here to give my support. And I think I'm going to do a very good job because I think I can convince others to join me in those pathways. And I don't care whether they're Democrat, Republican, or Green. We have work to do, and I think we can get that work done.
Wow, I've learned so much from you, Mr. Campbell. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you. Before we're going to give you the mic to say your final thoughts and discuss anything that you haven't said, and more importantly, how do people donate to your campaign, and any last plug or pitch that you want to say to them why they should vote Stanley Campbell for our next United States Senator here in the state of Florida. The
Well,
mic is yours.
thank you, Ms. Turner, and thank you, Doc, for all of what you've done to get me on here. I can tell you, I'm born, raised, educated, and professionalized in the state of Florida. I know the issues of the state of Florida. I know Florida. I am a farmer. I didn't say that part. I got 3 golf courses, and believe me, I buy fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, tractors, and I have farm workers out there cutting it every day. I know the issues of Florida because I've lived them. I know how to be successful in Florida because I have built an entire life and career, and every single thing that I've learned, I learned here in Florida. I have 14 patents in artificial intelligence, and I never took a class outside of Florida, a math class outside of Florida A&M University. So the things that are going to be very important for us is saving our democracy. And I've taken that oath to support and defend the Constitution, to respect people as they come, whether they're women, whether they're LGBTQ or alike. I am the best person for the job because I have the lifelong experiences. I have raised my family. I have been married for 36 years. These are the things that are important to us, and they're important to this race. I am Stanley Campbell. I am going to beat Rick Scott like he stole something, because he did steal something. He's the monies that believe me, not just that, he stole the dreams. I could not go to my house and dream to be the person that I am today. And I couldn't see how we could make another person that way. So I'm telling you, vote for me, support me. It is a very difficult race. People are raising millions of dollars. In the communities that I come from, we don't have those millions to spare. But I can tell you, anything that you give us, if you go to stanleyforflorida.com, that's stanleyforflorida.com. Donate, volunteer, take a sign, take a flyer, bring somebody to the polls. But we're going to be voting in the primary in 9 days. August the 20th is the primary. When I go through the primary, I have to win the primary to be able to go straight up against Rick Scott. So please, stanleyforflorida.com. And I tell you, I'm going to see you on the campaign trail because I'm going to 67 counties. So thank you all, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts as we end the show?
Mr. Stanley for Florida, I most certainly thank you for coming on our show. I think that the fact that you're going to 6 or 7 counties that also include Glades County, Immokalee, those areas over where people don't even know what is an Immokalee. You know, they may ask, "What is?"
I tell you where Immokalee is. Immokalee is where that big running back that went over to play for the Colts, and who lives in Orlando. He's from Immokalee.
Yep.
Believe me, I know Immokalee. I have one of my medical doctors who's on staff here with my day job company is from Immokalee. Believe me, I'm going everywhere. I'm going down to the muck tomorrow, right?
You going to muck country? You going to Belgrade?
I'm going to the muck tomorrow, but I'm going to the muck tomorrow. I can tell you, I haven't been down to Key West because playing football down there. I think I'm scared of Key West because when you got tackled in Key West, you landing on shells and rocks. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be to Key West before Friday. I'm going everywhere because.
But if you got hit in Belgrade, you knew you were hit. I can tell you that.
You knew you were hit. That's a different kind of hit there.
That's a whole different kind of hit. Well, listen, what I want to say is this is a breath of fresh air. We have someone who's well educated. You know, I'm not even saying necessarily from my alma mater, even though it is, but you have someone who's well educated, who's taking this serious for Florida voters to try to get them into the next century, into the next 2 centuries by attacking those issues that are threatening our lives and our well-being. You're not just talking the talk, you want to walk the walk. And I employ all our listeners to come back, donate to stanleyforflorida.com. If there's a sign that I got an office over on Jacksonville North Side. If you want to put a sign in my front, right on my main highway, one of the main travel routes here, feel free. Just let me know. I'll put it up out there anytime you get ready. So I am very, and not just because you're a rattler, but because I like what I heard about global warming, how to attack the school system that is failing our students, especially minority students, and how we best do for everyone in Florida. You didn't just say black students or brown students. The direction that you headed was for everyone, to whether they were veterans, whether they were not veterans. You wanted to make everyone in Florida and the United States to be successful in competition with the rest of the world, and to bring back enough breathing room for us to survive the next century.
Thank you again. Thank you again, Mr. Campbell. And hopefully our viewers had an opportunity to really get to understand and learn how Mr. Campbell, when elected as our next senator here in the state of Florida, how he will help just those of us who are not in the upper income bracket, but for all levels of workers here in the state of Florida. I think he articulated very well what his vision is for the state of Florida. Thank you again, Mr. Campbell. Don't forget, if you believe in what he says, early voting is now happening. Make sure you don't wait until August 20th when the lines will be long. Go now and look for a Stanley Campbell. And if you want to volunteer or contribute to his campaign, as he says, stanleyforflorida.com. Tune in on Tuesday night as we will continue the conversation here on our regular night for Pause for the Truth, as we really break it down and talk about why your vote does matter. Despite what people say, it does matter. If it did not, they would not want to try to steal it, nor put barriers up for you not to be able to get to the poll. Thank you, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can broaden the audience who hears our expert speakers such as Mr. Campbell. Good evening, and see you on Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
And
you,
there we
sir.
have it, another episode of the Pause for the Truth podcast in the proverbial books. Our heartfelt thanks go out to every one of you who took the time to tune in. Mark your calendars. We're here every Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Feel free to join our community on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But the golden ticket? Subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's your passport to all our latest episodes and exclusive content. A special mention to the wizard behind the curtain, Tyrone Jackson from Call Tyrone IT Services. His technical prowess and unwavering dedication are the backbone of this podcast. Next week, we'll be back with more. Until then, tell your friends, tell your family about our show. Your support is invaluable. And remember,